Welcome to the Pindown, your Detroit Pistons podcast. I'm your host, Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys.
And I'm Blake Silverman, writer for Detroit Bad Boys, covering everything Pistons, and news writer for Sports Illustrated.
I feel like we got to give our guy Order of the Blazing Horse, those guys, the podcast that they do, we got to give them like a special shout out here at the start because they were in this room at 9:35 for me in the morning. I'm in Central Time. And of course, we end up rescheduling here today.
That's my bad.
On a Saturday afternoon. Well, no, it's my bad because I completely forgot to change the live time, right, for the stream time on YouTube. So it's me who needs to give the apology to the guys over there. But appreciate them as always for sticking in with our live chat. And then we got a couple others here as well. As always, you got questions, comments, want to contribute to the conversation. We'll pull these up as we're going through it. But yeah, Blake, recording next day after it was an entertaining game, but ultimately a unfortunate loss to the Houston Rockets. What were maybe some just high level, what was the big takeaway for you coming out of this game, as much as we could do that before we dive into more of the nitty gritty?
Yeah, I mean, I think just a tough game against a tough opponent coming after a win against the Pelicans that you get when you don't have Cade Cunningham. His health is a little bit of a question coming into the game. Rockets really did everything they can to neutralize Cade and Jalen Duren and make everyone else on the Pistons beat them. And those players were not able to beat the Houston Rockets. And then you couple that with Kevin Durant's 32 points and 5 threes. I thought it was just a tough matchup overall. I mean, credit to the Pistons for staying in it as long as they did. I mean, obviously tough third quarter, which really made the game not completely get away. You have a nice fourth quarter. But yeah, night when you're shooting 22% from three, 48% from the field, and 70% from the foul line, and your best player is really, he might be healthy, he might not, and everything that he normally does, the Rockets are doing a great job of taking away from him and forcing him into 6 turnovers as well. Like, not a terrible game from Cade, but not one of his better ones that we're going to see, still getting 8 assists. So I thought the Rockets just did a great job, and it was a tough matchup for the Pistons overall. So sort of one I'm willing to throw away a little bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, obviously it's 1 out of 82 games, but the Rockets are a good team. And, they do have a little bit of Celtics to them, in my opinion. Like, not in the same way. Boston's a difficult matchup for Detroit because they don't turn the ball over a lot. They're okay defensively, but they've got a decent amount of size to throw at Cade if they want. And then they just, they shoot a ton of threes, right? So there's a big stylistic difference between the team. Boston is pretty good at mitigating the things Detroit thrives on. It's kind of the same idea here with the Rockets, just in a little bit of a different way. Like, the Pistons are a team that really thrives off forcing turnovers and running in transition. The Rockets don't do those things very often, right? They don't turn the ball over a ton, and they are one of the slowest paced teams in the league. They like to grind you down in the half court. They've got the players to do it, with KD to an extent to, like, your Reed Shepherd off the bench, Jabari Smith Jr., Alperen Sengun. Like, they are a very talented half-court offensive team with Amen Thompson to get out and run on the break whenever they choose to actually do that. But that's not super conducive to the Pistons having a lot of success. And I think we saw that here, right? Because I didn't think that the Pistons really played poorly defensively. They did hold the Rockets to 49% from the floor, 35% from three. Right? They didn't play a terrible game defensively. It's just when the Rockets are slowing it down so much, and then they're actually hitting those half-court shots, and you can't really, it's harder. You can get out on the break after a make, but it's much more difficult to do, especially with consistency. Yeah, it's just not always a recipe for success, I think, for Detroit. So this to me was another one of those stylistic games. It just ended up being a little bit of a tougher matchup than I think most of us fans really gave it credit for. And credit to the Rockets, right, for being able to execute on their game plan. They slowed the game down. They forced the Pistons to play in the half court, and that's why they won the game.
Yeah, and I mean, it just how Houston's team is made up, and specifically like their starting bunch from yesterday, the lengthiness they have is going to give many teams a problem. I think specifically the Pistons with how much they're able to cover, and I mean, you really have four wings out there, and then Alperin, Şengün, and we saw that gave Cade a hard time. He wasn't, and obviously it was Houston putting a lot of their attention on Cade, putting two on the ball and everything. And credit to Cade, like he does a good job at working around that on most nights. And some of it was his teammates not making shots, but I think overall it we're going to talk a lot about the trade deadline, and you need, when Cade's getting neutralized like he was against Houston, you need the points to come from elsewhere. And I mean, Jalen Duren had 18 points, Isaiah Stewart had 16 off the bench, Ron Holland had a nice night, but that's just not going to get it done with a team that has Kevin Durant. And even though, like you said, the Pistons did a fairly good job defensively and controlling the Rockets and keeping the game close, they just needed a little more oomph offensively. And who knows if that'll come at the trade deadline because of how well the Pistons have been playing. But I think in the long run, like you can look back on games like this and say, maybe you do need a secondary on-ball guy, or at least like a bigger scorer alongside Cade Cunningham. Jalen Duren's done a great job of that for the majority of the season, even though he's not your traditional guy that's going to give you 20, 25, 30 points a night. So maybe there is a need that they need, not trying to overreact to one game, but it certainly would have been nice to have, like you needed better than 2 for 8 from 3 from Duncan Robinson last night. He's not going to do better than that every night. So it happens. He's done better than that a lot of games so far, but yeah, you just need a little more scoring power, and it's a question like where that's going to come from for the rest of the year, and maybe even further out ahead than that.
And we should probably talk about the defense that the Rockets threw at Detroit, because I did think it was really clever actually by Ime Udoka to do what he did. So usually, right, if teams recently that have been playing Detroit, they're kind of putting their big on Asar Thompson and they're just sagging way off, letting him stay near the rim and not bothering with, really paying too much attention to him unless he's as a cutter. Well, what the Rockets did, they kind of did that, but then they also blitzed Cade on the screens, because what the Pistons started doing to counter this defense that teams were throwing on Asar was to use Asar as a screener the past couple of games. And it's difficult to play, basically 1 versus 2 players, right? When you're guarding these ball screens, if the big's all the way down at the rim. And that had been working to somewhat, some success. It's not like Cade has been lighting it up from the floor or anything, but for the most part, we've been attributing that to the wrist injury that he had, not really the defense. Well, the Rockets changed it up. They started blitzing Cade off of almost every single ball screen, regardless of who was actually guarding it. So even if it was Şengün that was on Asar Thompson in a ball screen, they still blitzed, and they were sending a lot of help underneath as well. So how do you think the Pistons actually ought to counter that? Because you have to believe that, the Rockets get the win in this game. They hold Cade to 12 points on 5 of 13 shooting. He had, 8 assists and 6 turnovers. So this was an effective defensive strategy against Detroit here, held the team to 104 points. Strategically, how do you think the Pistons counter this?
Well, what JB Bickerstaff said after the game, he had a quote that how the Pistons play is they try to make the defense make decisions on how the Pistons are going to play. And I think the way that the Rockets played the Pistons, and specifically what they threw at Cade Cunningham, just made that difficult. It was maybe a little different from what they see night in and night out. And when a team plays that way, you're going to get a lot because of all the attention on Cade. You're going to get open players everywhere. Maybe, again, we're going to talk about the trade deadline. We've talked about maybe adding some more shooting somewhere on this team. If you have an open shooter in those scenarios that can make down a few threes, that's an easy way to change that defense a bit, make Houston or another team do something else. But I think it's just taking advantage of what the defense gives you. They weren't really able to do that last night against the Rockets. And if the roster stays the same past the trade deadline, I think it's more of understanding that that's probably going to be coming because other teams saw the success that this one team had against the best team in the Eastern Conference. So how do you take advantage? Is it using Asar as a cutter more, like we talked about? Obviously, it's making shots when Tobias Harris or Duncan Robinson are left open. So just getting a little better about taking advantage of what the defense is giving you because Cade has so much attention on him.
So this is a really interesting comment here from Michael Dompier in the live chat. It says Asar was cooking on offense for a bit. Was that a scheme or adjustment related or just kind of a variance thing? And then obviously Asar gets into foul trouble. What's so interesting about this one to me is this was directly a product of how Houston was guarding Detroit, right? So when you blitz Cade in the pick and roll, and you're not really sending help to the middle of the floor, what it opens up is Asar Thompson as the roll man to play in the short roll, right? Well, I actually thought he really struggled with this, and it's funny to say so, even though he had a pretty efficient night. He was 5 or 8 from the floor, but he only had 3 assists. He had 2 turnovers, and to me, he looked really indecisive when the Pistons put him into that position quite a bit. Asar Thompson kind of playing, he had, he's at the free throw line, everything's out in front of him, and he's got a player advantage offense to the defense. And it just seemed like he couldn't capitalize all that often on that, or at least he wasn't aggressive in seeking to capitalize that. And you can kind of compare and contrast this to what Duren has done earlier on in the season in similar positions. So like, to me, it was nice to see Asar go 5 for 8, but in that kind of situation, he either needs to be more aggressive with his shot, which I think we all kind of know he's not likely to do, or become a better playmaker, which it seemed to me like Houston was really banking on him not being capable of doing. And in this case, to some success with a 3-to-2 assist to turnover ratio. So like, to me, the whole issue, or not issue, but the whole like adjustment that you'd have to make in order to counter this sort of defense is to get Asar Thompson out of these short rolls or have some sort of secondary action that makes his read easier after the fact. But given that these are not always hard and fast sets, right, that are being run, that's Houston then is countering with this. I think that might be pretty difficult to do. I think I would have just preferred, okay, you're putting Jabari Smith Jr. on Jalen Duren. Let's see how he guards the pick and roll, and then have Jalen Duren play out of the short roll. I think that's the short-term solution. Long-term, though, I don't know. It's interesting. It's kind of a fun puzzle.
Yeah, with Asar, when he is the guy that is getting those advantages a lot, you need, although, like you said, he had a nice night offensively, 5 for 8, 12 points, 3 assists. So let's just say he accounted for 18 points with those 3 assists. I think you just need a little bit more of that when he's the guy that is able to take advantage. And it's not, I don't think it's all on Asar either. Like Tobias Harris just had 4 points, 1 for 6 from the field. No other starter besides Duncan Robinson even made a 3. It was just the 2 for 8 from Duncan Robinson. And we know that Asar's work that he has to do is on the offensive end of the floor. So I'm not necessarily shocked that we would come out of this game thinking we need a little bit more from him, and maybe it comes over time. I think it'll always be the part of his game that lags behind a little bit and will be the point of discussion. But yeah, when he's able to have those easy looks or create easy looks for his teammate, you just want want more of that. And I mean, credit to him. He did a nice job from the opportunities that he got himself. But I'm with you. The eye test for me was a little bit of like, if he was put in a position to create, play, make for his teammates, it definitely lagged behind a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, like, just imagine, I don't know, like, I guess swap Tobias Harrison, right? Like, if the Rockets were guarding Tobias Harrison the way that they were guarding Asar Thompson, imagine how many points Tobias would have had after having to play in that short roll situation, right? And I know that's not like 100% a fair comparison, but it is still, I think it's important to point out, because that's really, to me, what the Rockets were banking on. They were saying, okay, we're going to blitz Cade to get the ball out of his hands. We know that Detroit's going to have Asar Thompson play that screener if we don't put our big on Jalen Duren, because they want to get the big in the screen and roll. So let's see if Asar Thompson can beat us out of the short roll. And he didn't. I thought he had an okay night, but like you said, or like we both have said, right, he just wasn't aggressive enough in that situation. And, so we've gotten a couple of comments on Duren. So let's see, Piper423 says this is why Duren didn't play a ton. Pistons wanted Asar Thompson's defense, but Duren and Thompson both try to play at the dunker spot. We also had Michael Dompier say not necessarily a negative about Duren, but he only played 26 minutes despite no foul trouble. If he's the legit second scorer, maybe he needs to figure out how to get more involved. I think I really do think this is, again, like learning experiences, right? So we've been talking about this on the show quite a bit at this point, but Jalen had a really nice night. 18 points, 7 or 13 from the floor, got 4 free throws, so got to the line twice. I mean, you'd probably like to see a little bit more out of him in the rebound or maybe the block department. But overall, like, I thought he put up a good fight against Sengun, who's one of the best bigs in the league, and actually punished him quite a few times. There are some very impressive Jalen Duren offensive plays. Is this one of those games where you just think, hey, look, in the future, you got to be the guy to lift everything out of this, right? So Rogue Blue says Ivy was supposed to be the guy that could punish teams for using this sort of defensive tactic. Maybe just get creative and ask Jalen Duren to do it too. Again, I guess we don't know if he can do it for sure or not, but it'd be good to know before the playoffs. It'd be great to know.
Yeah, I think why you see Jalen Duren with 26 minutes, which is the same as Duncan Robinson and Tobias Harris, is specifically how Houston was guarding the pick and roll. And because Duren is like just so good in that, and that's where the majority of his offense comes from. Maybe there weren't as many opportunities for him in this game compared to others, but even saying that, like you said, he still had a nice night. And I mean, Isaiah Stewart was really good off the bench and got 25 minutes. So we've seen Isaiah Stewart's minutes and they don't always have to come at the expense of Jalen Duren's minutes. So I think it was a mixture of things, like the night that Isaiah Stewart was having, and also just how Houston was guarding the pick and roll, which definitely made things not as easy for Jalen Duren as they probably are on most other nights.
So here's what, and we can kind of wrap up on this. I would love to get your opinion on this, Blake, but what I'd like to see these next couple of games, because I do think we're on the same page. The Pistons are probably going to see this same defense thrown at them quite a bit now. What I would like to see is, if teams start doing this against Cade, let's have Duren be that kind of DHO hub right around the perimeter. Stop going to the pick and rolls so much. There's really not a fantastic counter. So let's run the offense a little bit through Jalen Duren as a bit of a facilitator and see if we could get maybe Cade downhill. But if not him, like, I trust Tobias Harris to turn the corner and make something happen at DHO. I trust Duncan Robinson to get, that kind of escape side dribble and maybe get an open three from that. I think Cade might be able to set up his cut well enough off of that where he can get some space himself, right? It's not a traditional pick and roll. It's kind of harder to blitz those. You got to be a little bit more on your toes if you're guarding Jalen Duren. And of course, if someone starts blitzing, then Duren can just keep it turned around and kind of go to the rim. So, like, to me, I think that's the easy counter. I don't know if that's, amazing with Asar Thompson still on the floor, So the issue there being you don't have that second shooter, or you do have a second non-shooter in this case. But I think it could work well enough where maybe you can just pull a team out of that sort of defense for a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also just as an ad, like Rogue Blue said, Ivy it is supposed to be the guy that helps you get out of this. So maybe we do see Jaden Ivey get more involved as the season goes on. No, the trade deadline is coming up. We'll see what happens there. I mean, we've talked about it before. I expect Ivy to stick around, and hopefully we see his role increase as time goes on. He gets more games under him as well. But Pipper, sorry if I'm not saying it right, makes a great point here. How the Rockets played Cade last night is how the Pistons are going to see defenses in the playoffs. Totally agree with that. You're going to have to figure out a way to go around that. I think using Jalen Duren more in DHOs is definitely a way to do that and create some looks for, hopefully, if it's not Cade, Tobias Harris and Duncan Robinson, or maybe you do see more of a Jaden Ivey to sort of provide the scoring that the Pistons need when their primary initiator and just like the guy who runs the entire offense is being hindered a bit.
I think this is really the beauty of the 82 game season, though, right? We just had a game here in late January where the Rockets threw something at the Pistons we've not seen yet this season. And now it's up to the team to kind of figure out how to counter that. Because, yeah, I mean, like Piper said, right? If this continues to be successful, the Pistons are certainly going to see this as a defensive strategy against them in the playoffs. But I can remember saying something very similar at the start of the season as well. Teams they weren't as hard double teaming. They weren't blitzing Cade as much, but they were sending like 3 or 4 guys his way when he started driving to the rim early on. And Cade figured out how to counter that. Teams aren't doing it as much, right? So we've already had this conversation one time where we've said, oh, this is probably a playoff defense against Detroit. And lo and behold, Detroit works and figures out a way to counter that, and teams stop doing it as much. We probably won't see it as often in the playoffs. They've got another opportunity to do that here. Now with that, just to like not be super negative. All right, Blake, the last 10 games for the Pistons, 7-3. That is the best mark in the Eastern Conference. Like I get it, right? They lost a tough game against the Rockets. The offense hasn't looked great so far in the month of January. Their efficiency is kind of down. Over the last 10 games, they are still the best team in the Eastern Conference. The sky's not falling here. Okay.
Oh yeah.
It's okay. We're going to lose games. This is good.
100%. And I hope it doesn't seem like that the way that we're talking about this game, because it is one of 82. And I think this team is in a better spot than anyone could have ever imagined heading into the season. And on top of how they've been playing as of recent, you're 4.5 games clear by this of the Celtics, who are second in the East. The Knicks are going through it right now. There's a lot of unknown in the East that will become a bit more known once the trade deadline is here and passes. But especially once you win that tough game against the Celtics, that was an incredible win for this team, and a big win, honestly, when you look at who's at the top of the conference. 4.5 games with when we're still a few weeks before the All-Star break. I'm not saying it's a sure thing that the Pistons are going to remain at the top of the East, but I like their chances much better than anyone else at this point, which is just incredible to say. And like we talked about last week, they've found ways to win games that they really shouldn't win, whether it's Cade and or Jalen Duren are out and the team still finds a way to win, or it's just a game where they have to pull a win out through the mud and they're able to find a way to do that. Didn't happen against Houston, but I think that they're still able to do that, and they're in a great position. I mean, even just 30 wins before the end of January, I would have said was incredible. They're already at 32 with a few more opportunities. So have to be optimistic where everything is right now.
Yeah, absolutely. They're just sitting so nice. They've got a 4-loss advantage over any other team right now in the Eastern Conference within Eastern Conference play. That's huge for tiebreakers. Like they've already got the tiebreaker over the Celtics. I mean, the Knicks are really struggling right now. Like you said, they're sitting at 4th. The Knicks, they are actually only a game ahead of the Cavaliers right now, if you guys can believe that. So, like, you're right. The Pistons are really looking solid, I think, here as we're heading into the All-Star break and in another few weeks. JB is going to be coaching that game. How about that? That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Right. Never would have guessed that. Let's get into a couple of questions here that we had pre-submitted. I wanted to get into this because, well, I did do a little background research for it, and I think we can hit it quickly. So this is from No From Motown in the DBB comments. It says, what changes for Dennis Jenkins once he's converted to a standard NBA contract? I know there's a pay bump, but are there other perks? Blake, are you aware of other perks, or do you want me to just hop on and say not really?
Well, yeah, it's not really. I think the perk besides the pay is there's the limit of games that two-way players can dress. So that goes out of the window. But other than that, and a much deserved raise for Dennis Jenkins, if he gets converted to a standard NBA deal, I think his role, everything else, how we see Dennis Jenkins in Pistons games will be much of the same.
Yeah, and so I did it, guys. I actually pulled up the CBA, the actual document, and I read through the player contract and the benefits pages of that. So I'm here to report that as far as I'm aware, as long as a player is rostered for more than 50% of the games, they will get full pension benefits. And two-way players have there's little blurbs in each section here regarding a full 401k match, life insurance, and workers' comp. So whatever additional like contract benefits there are, basically for all intents and purposes, two-way players they're full-time NBA players as long as they are rostered, and by rostered either active, inactive, or like injured for 50% or more of the games, which Dennis Jenkins is certainly well on the way to reaching that. So other than just getting more stuff, nothing really huge. It's all very run of the mill.
Yeah, how we see it, it'll be the same, but definitely some perks for Dennis Jenkins, and all the benefits are a big deal for these players. Like you see players try to extend their careers to meet the covered insurance and everything. So credit to you, Wes, for digging into the CBA and finding some of that nitty gritty.
It worked out. I thought maybe I'd find something more interesting, so I was a little bit disappointed. But it's all good for Dennis, right? Good for Dennis. He's covered. He's set. He's just going to get more money, which is great for him. All right, we got this great live question here. This is from Pistons fan 11. How do you see us getting more three-point shooting? I assume the trade exception and a small chance of a bigger trade. What about Chaz Lanier? Why doesn't he play? And does he need more development? So we can kind of take the two parts of this. Right, first, how do you see the Pistons adding more shooting, presumably here at the trade deadline upcoming? And then what do you think about Chaz Lanier maybe being added to the rotation?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Lanier, I think he just needs more time, even though he is an older prospect who's more ready, quote unquote, but he's had some opportunity, but just looking at the season, he's shooting around 34% from three. We've seen him get some run with the Motor City Cruise. I think the team just wants to continue that. I don't think he's really the answer this season to the shooting question. I think it can definitely be a benefit in the future. So I do see, like, if there is a way to address shooting this year, it will be through a trade before the deadline. I think we had some great names thrown out in the chat that we've talked about before, like Vic Krejci and Luke Kennard from Atlanta. Like both of those names, I think we brought them up before. And then just looking around the rest of the market, I mean, who knows what, like maybe Malik Monk is an option. I know we've talked about Sam Hauser a bit. I don't think the Celtics are going to trade him at all, and especially not to the team that they're trying to catch in the Eastern Conference. So I think there are some options as well. Like, I wonder what Chicago is going to do with Kobe White and Ayo Dosunmu. Both those players are just on expiring deals. So I don't know if they're necessarily part of the future plans, and maybe they want to capitalize on getting some sort of asset before one or either walk. And then maybe Golden State tries to make a move and you can get Buddy Hield or something like that, even though they probably want to keep him. Dallas, I don't think you're going to get Max Christie, but maybe you can get Najee Marshall. So I think there are definitely some ways to fill the shooting, at least to a degree. I don't think it's going to be 100% solved through the trade market, but I think you can definitely do something. And Wes, how about Dalton Connect? Like, let's get him out of LA. I'd like to see that one. And I think that would be just like a step up from what Chaz Lanier could bring you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Connect is basically a younger Duncan Robinson in a way. Good size, bad defender, but puts forth some effort on that end. Coach's kid, all that good stuff. And great shooter. And he's been having issues in LA basically since the whole trade that wasn't actually a trade. So yeah, I'd be down to rescue him out of the Lakers, especially if it's cheap. Now, with Chaz Lanier, real quick, I'll just echo you as well. Like, as pulling up his G League stats, all right? So in 8 games, it's 16.5 points per game. He's shooting about 15 shots per game, but the percentages just aren't great, right? So he's at 37% from 3 and 44% from 2. In the NBA, that's pretty good. Absolutely. But in the G League, where frankly not a lot of defense is played, especially not at the rim, you'd like to see both of those higher. It's not like he's really dominating the G League, like he's looking like he's too good for the G League or anything like that. So, I think he does just need a little bit more time. He's certainly not at the level that like a Dennis Jenkins is, right? Like you look at Dennis Jenkins, you say, well, he shouldn't be playing in the G League, even if he falls out of the rotation in Detroit, right? Well, Lanier's just not at that level yet. So give him a little bit more time. Yeah. As for the shooting at the deadline, it's gotta be that trade exception, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the most likely outcome at this point is there's some bigger move going on that needs to shed salary that one of the teams doesn't want to take. And then the Pistons can get a shooter that they're interested in for essentially nothing. Like maybe you can send out Isaac Jones because he's essentially a vet minimum, and almost every single team, I think, unless you're over the second apron, can accept a veteran minimum contract without actually getting salary back, right? Or sending salary out, I should say. So if the Pistons send out Isaac Jones, get back a player into the traded player exception, that's an easy route. Now, who that could be, I don't know, because it just depends on who's actually making the bigger move at that time. But I think that's the easiest path for the Pistons to capitalize on some form of shooting. I think I'd prefer it to be a front court player. Like Bobby Portis would be great. His contract is a little long. I'll throw that out there. He's still got, I think, 2 seasons after this one. So that's a little less than ideal.
Sort of hurt too.
Also that, yeah, he is. So, like I love the idea of Bobby. I don't know if it's actually going to work out this deadline, but a front court player who could shoot, I think, would be my like number one on the wish list at this point.
Yeah, and then just going back to, I mean, if the Pistons really do just try to go out and acquire shooting one for one, like I think you got to look at teams like the Charlottes, the Sacramentos, the Kings, maybe all the teams that are trying to sell. And I mean, I don't like the Bulls as a team, I mean, I think that they've done okay in an up and down year, but I feel like you could try to prize someone away from them, and whether it's the names that I brought up of Dosunmu or Kobe White, but they also have Kevin Herter who helps as a shooter. And I mean, maybe Chicago does want to hold on to their roster. Like they're an even 500 right now. They're in the play-in conversation, but if I was that front office, I would punt toward the future and just try to accumulate some sort of assets. They probably won't agree with me because they haven't in the past, but that's one I'd look at too. If you're not going to get anything from like the Brooklyns, Indianas, or Sacramento, New Orleans, or Dallas, those type of teams.
So honestly, I am really only interested in one Chicago Bull player. And it's not Kobe White, not Kevin Herter. It's actually Jalen Smith. I would be very interested in Jalen Smith. I could see them trying to just get rid of his $9 million salary because he is. Let me actually double check this. I think he's under contract into next year. Jalen Smith, yes, he is. So he's got another year on this deal that he's got right now. So next season he'll be a $9.4 million contract. I could just see the Bulls wanting to get rid of that. Jalen Smith is a pretty good defender in my estimation, in low minutes so far for the Bulls, just under 20. He's averaging about a block per game and about half a steal, so that's pretty good. And he can shoot it a little bit. 36% as a combo 4-5 off the bench, which I think would be really great for Detroit to have just one more of those guys. Ron Holland has been admirable, but if you could kind of free him up from playing as much of the 4, then I think that's a win. And on top of it, if you are of the position that, hey, maybe Isaiah Stewart needs to start and play more minutes, well, then having a player like Jalen Smith off your bench also lets you be flexible in that way, because Stewart could still be a backup 5. Jalen Smith can play the 4. Jalen Smith can also play the 5 for stretches next to Harris, right? You can play him in either spot. So I think that'd be a win for me. I'd be very interested in that.
Yeah, I like that one a lot too. I mean, fits the front court archetype that you're talking about as well, and helps fill at least a little bit of the shooting void. I mean, he's not going to come in and be someone you look to take a ton of threes a night, but just being able to be out there and be able to stretch the floor a little bit will certainly help.
OG unnamed YouTube user says JB also has to be willing to play another bad defender. He seems to pull Ivy every time he makes a mistake. I would say that's somewhat fair. Because Jaden Ivey has, in my estimation, been the worst non-Duncan Robinson defender on the team so far this year. Now, of course, he's still getting his legs under him, so I think patience is still a virtue there. But look, it's not like he was lighting it up from 3 against the Rockets here. He was 2 for 5. You gotta, if you're gonna be bad defensively, then I think you got to be a little bit better than 2 for 5 from 3 to earn those minutes. So I do think, would it be better if Ivy could get more than 14 minutes a night? Yes, absolutely. That's what I would like to see as well. I think that we're kind of discovering he pairs better with a Dennis Jenkins than he does a Karis LeVert, which is interesting. I don't know if I would have picked that out myself before the season started, but I'd like to see a little bit more out of him. And he's either got to make a lot more from 3, or he's got to be a better defender. 2 YouTube users point Duncan was 2 for 8 from 3-point range against the Rockets. Absolutely true, but Duncan Robinson has earned the right to keep chucking, and Jaden Ivey doesn't have that reputation yet. So when Ivey goes cold, defense does not shift to him nearly as much. When Duncan Robinson goes cold, they guard him like he just made 4 in a row. They don't care. It's reputation thing. So unfortunate, but true.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think we've seen how the Pistons want to play, just prioritizing defense as much as possible. You're not getting that with players like Jaden Ivey, but I mean, you also do have Duncan Robinson in your starting lineup, who has gotten picked on a ton. So I think if Trajan Langdon in the front office, what they can do and what they want to do is to go out and get a shooter, a player who can give you buckets, but doesn't really give you a lot of defense. I mean, we can talk about how it maybe impacts Jaden Ivey's minutes or just like role with the team if he's not involved in a trade. But yeah, I think JB would certainly at least like play what the front office is giving him to help make his life a little bit easier.
All right, so this is going to be kind of just for fun. All right, but I was able to take part in a mock trade deadline here for the Pistons. So I was basically the pretend Trajan Langdon, and you guys you can listen to kind of a podcast episode talking about the moves that I did, right? If you want to dive into more detail with that, that was the Bird Rights podcast. So find that on Spotify. It was a lot of fun, but I was curious to get Blake yours, and then in our comment section here, our live opinions essentially of if Trajan Langdon did this, how would we view the deadline? So I'm going to lay out the first move, and then we'll talk about the second one after that. So the first one was a barn burner. All right. Oklahoma City really wanted to add Lauri Markkanen. They sold the farm to go and get him. They needed someone to take on salary, and whether or not that's realistic, I don't know, but they were willing to part with Isaiah Joe. So essentially, as a fourth team in a big Lauri Markkanen trade, I was able to have the Pistons send out Isaac Jones, take back Isaiah Joe, and 3 second-round picks for the trouble. How would we grade that move?
A plus. I think that
yes.
Yeah, great GM work. I mean, if that does happen, that would be wild. I just don't see Oklahoma City doing as much of anything, let alone going out to get Lauri Markkanen. And just curious, when you say giving up the farm, what did they give up in addition to Isaiah Joe?
Oh man, they gave up a ton. So Topic was heading out. One of the lesser Williams was heading out. Let's see, they gave up, I think it was 4 first-round picks as well. So it was actually a really interesting trade. So the way it worked out from OKC's perspective was if you drew up their 10-man rotation from last season when they win the NBA championship, they gave up players roughly 9 and 6 from that rotation and 4 first-round picks to go and get Lauri Markkanen. So the big headliner names coming out were Lou Dort and Nikola Topic. And then Isaiah Joe was kind of their 9th man. So like if you think about it from their perspective, it actually makes a ton of sense. This was not a Troy waiver move, as YouTube user says. It actually made a ton of sense. They lost 2 lower minute rotation players. Lou Dort's important, but still. And then they got back Lauri Markkanen to do it. So like, yeah, I'm with you. I'm with YouTube user too. That's unrealistic. I don't think the OKC would actually do this. I also don't think that they'd ever really want to part with Isaiah Joe. He's fantastic as a shooter. But I guess stranger things have happened.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't think OKC would do that either. If there is a team in position to give up that many first-round draft picks for Lauri Markkanen, you can make the argument that it definitely is the Thunder. It's just like, will they do that after all the incredible work from Sam Presti to put them in the position that they are in? I'm just like, I don't know. And maybe it helps with the trouble that they've had with the Spurs. I mean, they were able to beat them last time, but you keep SGA, obviously, Jalen Williams, Hartenstein, like the majority of your core, and you just punt on your future, which I think is at least a fair argument to keep on winning. But yeah, I think giving up Isaiah Joe would be a big deal for them. They're clearly getting an immediate upgrade, but I think that would be a home run for the Pistons, especially in the deal that you outlined. Isaiah Joe is under contract for 2 more years. He has a team option on the last season. And
Yeah.
It's just like he's on a descending deal. So he's only an $11 million player in each of the next 2 seasons. And he's shooting near 40% from 3 this season on over 5 attempts a game, mostly pretty much all off the bench. So that's exactly what the Pistons need. It's just, I wish it would happen. I just don't think it will.
I think the more realistic element of that trade is basically just as a kind of case study of what actually could happen at the deadline, right? Like you've got, in that case, there were 2 teams. It was the Jazz and the Thunder were in really deep talks to make a big swing move. You know, it doesn't, in reality, it's probably not going to be the Jazz and the Thunder, right? But there are going to be 2 other teams talking and wanting to make a bigger swing. And if the Pistons can come around and be a team that takes in a little bit of salary and you pay them a fee to do it, such as, you know, the additional 2nd round picks that the Pistons were able to get in that hypothetical mock trade deadline deal, I think that's totally realistic. Now, you know, who the teams are, who the player is, I don't know. But you got to understand that $14 million traded player exception that they have, that's basically the mid-level exception. That's actually a lot. That is a lot of salary that the Pistons are able to just open up the books and take in for another team. So if you have a couple of teams like the majority of the NBA right now that's really on the margins cap-wise and just can't take back that much cash, but the other team has to give it up, Pistons are a great home for that. And I think that there are actually probably quite a few teams where something like this would be appealing for the Pistons to be able to do. Again, you know, I don't think it's going to be the Thunder. I don't think it's Isaiah Joe. But something like this, I think that if I had to make a bet on any sort of trade that would happen involving Detroit, I think it'd be something along those lines, like a 3-team or a 4-team deal where you take back a shooter and then a couple of 2nd-round picks for the troubles.
Yeah, and I don't think we'll necessarily see Langdon want to. I mean, maybe he will if it is a player like Isaiah Joe. I mean, I definitely would take his deal considering the lengthwise, but if it's someone else that you don't see as part of the future long term, I don't think you're necessarily going to see them take in a guy that has multiple seasons after this one left on his contract, just because of how we've seen him operate in trades and the free agent signings he's made, trying to keep that flexibility moving forward. But with a player like Joe, I mean, you certainly make that move. Unfortunately, it won't happen, but there are a few cases where I think it could. I just think that aspect of lengthwise, Detroit taking it back might be a little bit unlikely too.
Yeah, the other thing that was just over the moon with that hypothetical trade was I was immediately thinking, oh, this is the long-term Duncan Robinson replacement. Younger, he's only 26, under contract for another 2 seasons, like you said, and just a shooter who, you know, he tries, he gives effort on defense, good size, but
he could start.
Not a good defender. Yeah, exactly. This one I think was going to be more interesting. I didn't know, especially given that in this hypothetical here, Isaiah Joe's kind of a wing guard hybrid, right? He's not really a big. And I've already said my preference here would be to have added a big, but I didn't get the opportunity to actually do that in this mock deadline. So what I was able to do instead was I cleared out a roster spot for Dennis Jenkins to sign a regular contract. I sent out Karis LeVert, Marcus Sasser, and 2 second-round picks, and I got back Colin Sexton. Now the net here with these 2 deals is essentially the Pistons added Isaiah Joe, Colin Sexton, and a 2nd-round pick to that cupboard long-term. Right? I got 3 back from the first deal. I sent out 2 from the second. So what would you think of adding a player in Colin Sexton who has actually, it was rumored or reported at one point, I can't recall by who, but it was reported the Pistons were at least looking in on Sexton, who has $18 million in salary this year and is expiring as a contract.
Yep. So expiring deal. I don't think the Hornets could expect anything more than 2nd-round picks. And if they are for some reason trying to get even a protected first out of the deal, I would just hang up, honestly. But if it does take Karis LeVert, because I mean, Karis is $14 million deal for the next 2 seasons. I think Trajan Langdon would be interested in opening up a little bit more space or flexibility. And even if that space is used to bring back Colin Sexton, if you do acquire him, but if that's what's available, I think I would make that trade. Just this season wise, Colin Sexton shooting 38.5% from 3 on 3.5 attempts per game, playing about 23 minutes a game for the Pelicans, mostly off the bench. He's scoring around 15 points a night. So Karis has been good at times, but we all know, we've all talked about, it's definitely been up and down for him. And I mean, Sexton isn't the perfect player by any means, but I think it would help just getting some more offense and more consistent offense into the group. The only thing is, I do wonder if you bring in Sexton, because he's on an expiring, maybe it doesn't matter, but what does it mean for Jaden Ivey moving forward? Is that possibly like the end for him with the Pistons, or what does his role look like for the rest of the season? I don't think Sexton would really start in this scenario, but I think he'd be a great scorer to bring in off the bench and maybe like give you a little bit more than Karis LeVert is. So I would do the trade. I wonder how it would impact the Jaden Ivey, but I think overall he definitely helps address the shooting at least, and can score otherwise too.
So interestingly enough, I actually, in my head, I did this for Jaden Ivey, not to replace him, because, so I mentioned this earlier in the show, but I would have guessed that Karis LeVert and Jaden Ivey would have worked much better together than they have this season. I think the minutes where both of those guys have been out there and they've both kind of been splitting that like lead initiator duty, it's not gone exceptionally well to me. So Colin Sexton's a player that I really like. Pitbull defender. I don't think he's as good of a defender as his reputation, but he's certainly disruptive as a defender. He's a very good shooter, and I trust him a lot more as a ball handler and initiator than either of LeVert or Jaden Ivey. So to me, like the plan for this was, all right, well, I wasn't able to figure out a way to get another big in at the deadline. The market just, for whatever reason, in this mock trade deadline, it wasn't there. So unfortunately, what ends up happening, or what I ended up doing, was clearing a spot for Dennis Jenkins on the roster by bringing in a player to put ahead of him. So, Dennis Jenkins gets his full-time spot, but he's also now just depth if something like this were to happen. However, like I do think if you really want to set Jaden Ivey up for some success and see what he's got right down the line the rest of the season, to make that decision on whether or not you're going to have him play in that qualifying offer. Are you going to try to sign and trade him? Do you try to actually extend him? Anything like that, right? I think that Colin Sexton helps you figure that out, at least right now. And a good shooter on top of it. So yeah, I do really like the player. I feel bad for Dennis though. That wasn't my goal. It just happened.
Yeah, true. And I mean, Sexton is averaging 4 assists per game this year and only 23 minutes. So I think a little bit better of a creator, which, like you said, could help Ivy. I just wonder like how much opportunity he'd get offensively, but maybe maybe JB is just looking for more depth, and it would help Ivy in the long run, even if he's not scoring at the rate we'd like him to. I think just, especially after last night, as we're talking after this game against the Rockets, like you need some more juice offensively. I think Colin Sexton can certainly bring that, at least to a degree. So I'd be comfortable making both those deals. I mean, one more than and I think with the second round picks that you're sending out to bring back Sexton, I'm not mad at that at all. Like I would certainly do that. I think second round picks are flown around, exchanged hands so many times through deals that I would certainly part with those. I know you brought some in, so it made that a little bit easier. It's just you see how hard it is to get a first round pick in a deal, and I don't think the Hornets would ask. They're really not in any position to ask for that for Sexton, but I like to see the Pistons hold on to those unless they really take a big swing, which I don't think they're going to do.
Last benefit of a deal like this, and why I think maybe Karis LeVert actually could be on the out at this deadline. LeVert's under contract next season. Colin Sexton would not be. So you kind of get a mulligan on that cash. Frees up a little bit of money this upcoming offseason. You can redo. I don't think they're going to have the cap space to do a contract the size of a LeVert or a Sexton, but you kind of get some of that back, and you can use that with a different player moving forward. So guys, if you want to listen to more of that kind of mock deadline talk, go follow and look up the Bird Rights podcast. They do a great job over there. It's fun every year. They've been running this, I think, 3 or 4 seasons, this mock deadline. So it's a lot of fun. And I think, you guys would enjoy it. So there are plenty of other GMs too. It's fun to hear all these other teams' perspectives and what their fan bases are thinking their team is actually going to do. Because the whole purpose, right, is not to like predict the deadline, but get a bunch of people in that are going to do their best to do what they think is actually realistic for their team, or at least what they think their team should do. Right. So it's rare that you get the 2K trades. It happens every now and again, but otherwise it's pretty faithful. So it's a lot of fun. We got a couple of questions left before we wrap up. So first, let's go to @IYK Baseball. What would be the cost of a Kyrie Irving trade since Tim Bontemps, friend of the Pistons Pulse? If you guys haven't listened to that episode, go back and find it. That was a fun show when he joined us there. But he's been talking about the Pistons maybe making a move for Kyrie Irving. He thinks that they should. So what do you think that cost would actually be? And would it be a good idea?
Yeah, and Bontemps, fellow St. Bonaventure alum, so shout out to him too for that. Great guy. But the package is really Tobias Harris and Jaden Ivey plus first round picks. The sticky part, like I think the Pistons would have to give up multiple and potentially some swaps as well. So one I just put together was Harris Ivey, this year's first, 2028 first, 2029 first round pick swap. I don't know if that gets it done. Maybe it's more or less on the draft capital front, but Tobias Harris and Jaden Ivey as a package fit Kyrie's contract almost perfectly. Dallas has a fairly large trade exception from the Maxi Kleber deal that Ivey could slide into. I think the question is, and Kyrie's injury and everything makes it a little bit tricky. Like, will Dallas demand something additional, whether it's more first round picks or they need Ron Holland to get a deal done? I think that's the biggest question. I think the package that I laid out is more friendly to the Pistons, honestly. Even though they would have to give up multiple first round picks, which is a big deal and hinders just control over your draft in the next few years. Hopefully they could give up the least amount, but I don't see you getting Kyrie without putting multiple first round picks in the deal, or maybe instead of that, it's a Ron Holland, which I think with the Pistons picks getting less and less valuable, I think you'd be more likely to see them deal a first before you see them deal Ron Holland.
Yeah, I think it'd be expensive. And like YouTube user just said, Kyrie Irving is 33 years old. He has had multiple severe injuries in his career. I get that he's a great offensive player. That's still true, and it's probably still true when he comes back from this most recent injury. However, he has always been a pretty bad defender. So I think when you're looking at age and injury history, you're looking at the defensive side of the ball, and then you are looking at the price it would take to acquire him. I have no interest in Kyrie Irving. I don't want to give up any picks for a player with that sort of history. I certainly don't want to give up Ron Holland for that either. If it's gonna be just like Harrison LeVert or something, like, okay, fine, but that's certainly not what Dallas would want there, right? So I think I get the vision, but I'd be 100% out on adding Kyrie Irving for what I think it would take to get him. Last two here. First, it says, hey, this is from JoyJoy3310. Hey, guys, what's up from Albania? So that's awesome. Our international viewer. Welcome. It says, what do you think it would take to get Michael Porter Jr.?
I mean, the same Harris Ivy package works for Michael Porter Jr.
Plus picks.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, money-wise, Harris and Ivy work. But you have to add a ton more, even more than I think you would need to add to get Kyrie, like pretty much all the picks, all the swaps, which I get the Nets wanting that because of the season Michael Porter has had. They don't really have a face of their franchise, and Michael Porter can be there for a while, and maybe they get someone else through the draft. I think with this one, you're looking at even more of a, do the Nets need Ron Holland back? Who else do they ask for? Because I think if you're going out to get Michael Porter Jr., it's going to be an even larger price for pretty much all your picks, which I would love to get Michael Porter Jr. I think he'd be a great fit. If he's having an incredible season, I think would answer a lot of the questions that we have for this team, but the price is going to be high. So are you willing to pay it? Because it's a big deal. Like, I think if you go out and get Michael Porter, you probably can't take a swing like that for a while.
Yeah. I mean, basically for Michael Porter Jr., imagine the trade Danny Ainge would require for you to get Lauri Markkanen and then remove Asar Thompson from that trade. Like that's pretty much what I would expect you would need to give up. So like you said, it's multiple first round picks and some swaps. It's a couple of young, interesting players. So sure, maybe they take a flyer on Jaden Ivey, but guys, are we really sure Jaden Ivey is an asset right now beyond being a second draft candidate? Because I'm not. He's still proving that he's getting himself healthy and that he can be the player he was before he got hurt. Like this isn't the Jaden Ivey who's fresh off a month averaging almost 20 points per game. This is a Jaden Ivey off of a pretty horrific leg injury that he's working his way back from, and has been a little bit of a roller coaster so far. Like I just, he's a flyer at this point. So you need to add Ron Holland, and I don't want to do that either. So yeah, I think that's the thing with a lot of these big name targets for Detroit. If you look at the young player cupboard that they have, it's Asar Thompson and it's Ron Holland. I don't think that you can at the moment add in a player like Jaden Ivey as an asset. I think teams are probably more likely to look at Jaden Ivey and say, well, this is a second draft candidate that I could send a couple second round picks for and take a flyer on the rest of the season before deciding whether or not to extend him or not. Right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to do that deal if I'm Detroit. I just don't see how any other team would be thinking anything more than that. Last question here from Rogue Blue. Says, do you think that Royce O'Neal could possibly be a target for the Pistons? So since this is a name that I don't think maybe all of the listeners are going to be as familiar with, Royce O'Neal this season with the Phoenix Suns. He's 32 years old. He's averaging about 10 points per game, 5 rebounds, and just under 3 assists. He has started 40 of 45 games for them, averaging almost 30 minutes a night, and is shooting over 40% from 3 on 7 attempts.
Yeah, and I think we briefly touched on Royce O'Neal probably last week. So maybe he is. I think the surprise season that the Suns are having makes it a little bit more difficult. They're at the 6th seed right now, but they're tied with the Wolves for 7 and play in. So I think they're going to try to compete. And like Wes just said, he starts for this team. So it might take I think you'll need to send back something of value, but what does Phoenix see as value? Like, would they want Karis LeVert because he has 1 less year on his deal than Royce O'Neal does, and Royce O'Neal is an older player? We'll see. They maybe prefer Royce O'Neal, or they want to take, I don't think they would be a team that would really take a shot on Jaden Ivey because of Devin Booker and Jalen Green. So I think Royce O'Neal should definitely be on the radar, but I think just the season that the Suns are having makes it a little bit trickier.
Yeah, I was just going to pull up the Western Conference standings real quick here.
Yeah, the Suns are 27 and 18. They're right there with the Lakers and Wolves. So,
I mean, they're probably not going to come
far
ahead.
They're not going to come out of the West, but
no, but they're far and away beyond what I think anyone was really expecting them to do. And the thing with Royce O'Neal is, they're having a lot of success. I get that he's 32 years old, but he's not an expensive player at this point in his career, and he's been fantastic. He's a great defender for them. He's shooting, again, I'll say it again, almost 42% from 3 on 7 attempts. Royce O'Neal, he's been unbelievable so far this season. I think I would love to add him to the Pistons. I think it'd cost a 1st-round pick. Otherwise, why would they get rid of him?
Yeah.
So I don't think I want to spend a 1st on Royce O'Neal at this point, honestly.
Right. Yeah. And will this front office even do that for a 32-year-old player?
Right.
I don't think they will, but I think just player wise, whatever the package is aside, I think it would make sense. And I would love to add him to this team.
Yeah, I would too. I think the fit right there is just about as perfect as it could be, because he's got some positional versatility. He's more of a wing, but you could play him up at the 4, which is great for a team that's been playing Ron Allen at the 4 so much. But yeah, man, he's just going to be more expensive than I think people want, and yeah. I don't want to pay that. I just don't.
Yeah. Agreed.
All right, I think that we should probably wrap it up there, guys. So if you've been in our live chat, appreciate you all as always for the questions and the conversation, the participation you guys have been giving us here. We love reading through those. And wait. No, we need to play a voicemail because I forgot about this. We have one voicemail and it's a Malik Beasley question. So here we go.
My question is, do you think the Detroit Pistons would have a better record now if Malik Beasley had played all season instead of Duncan Robinson?
Okay, so my apologies to our mystery caller because this totally slipped my mind and I had meant to play it sooner. So that is my fault. But we did just play it now. Blake, would the Pistons be better this season if Malik Beasley were playing instead of Duncan Robinson?
I don't think so. If they were, it's a margin of 1 or 2 wins just because of where they sit and how well they played. And I don't say that to discredit Malik Beasley as a player, because he was very close to leading the NBA in threes last year. So that would obviously help the Pistons and fill a void. Duncan has given you a lot of that, not all of it. But I do think that if you just swap out those two, I think any like increase in wins or decrease would be very marginal. So I'm not willing to like go out there and say they'd be a ton better just because of how incredible this team has played. But yeah, Malik Beasley drama aside, it would certainly be nice to have him on the team right now.
Yeah, like I think the bigger question is what would they be doing if they had both of these guys? Because that would be more fun. Swapping out one for one. I think the answer is probably no. I'm gonna go with no. I think that the Pistons are better right now with Duncan Robinson than they would have been if Malik Beasley's in the same position. Only because I think Duncan Robinson is very vital to that starting lineup, where I just struggle to see a world where JB would have started Malik Beasley. Even with all the shooting, I think the size that Robinson gives you in that starting five is really helpful, despite the defensive concerns. And so I think that like if the Pistons didn't have Duncan and they had Malik Beasley, I think you'd be looking at maybe, I don't know who would be starting there. I guess Ivy would be starting at this point. Maybe they would have gone like small and shifted Asar Thompson down to the 2 to get someone else into that 3 position. And YouTube user brings up a good point. Like you probably don't have Karis LeVert because Beasley would have been in the mid-level exception. I think the whole offseason plays out a little bit differently.
Yeah.
If that drama with Malik Beasley doesn't happen. So all told, I think that they are a little better, even though Duncan Robinson is averaging 1 3-point make fewer per game than Malik Beasley did. That said, like I would love to add Malik Beasley right now. If the DOJ could just clear him really quickly, that would be great for me. I'd be excited to add him back in. But until that happens, we'll have to find something else as Pistons fans to watch out for.
Right. Yeah. I mean, hopefully he's back at some point, but we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, obviously. And there's a lot to get into there, which we won't do today, but just basketball wise, obviously would be great to have him. But like YouTube user said, plan A over the offseason was Malik Beasley, had to go to plan B. And I think the plan B was pretty darn good. And you see where the team is right now. So I don't think we can really complain about it. But yeah, shout out to our mystery caller for using the voice line. Reminder, anyone can call that number to ask a question, hear your voice on the show. The number for that is 313-355-2717. And special thanks to Sean Korb, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for supporting the show. And shout out to you guys for all the great questions and talking points tonight. We'll catch you next week, whether on your commute or live with us on YouTube. We can't wait to talk more Detroit basketball with you all.